So welcome. This is just an exciting kind of laid back time for me to share how I find imagery in my papers that are stained with plant elements, and that I can, and then I pull that out using watercolors. And then I also wanted to answer any questions that anybody had for our challenge class next week. Some of you may have signed up already. Some of you are on the fence about signing up. Some of you want more information. And so whatever questions come up about that, I would love to answer. And I'm just going to kind of start off with a look at some of these papers. And I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me put me up in the corner. So the papers that I created when I filmed the class that is launching on Monday, and the class is called Exploring Plant Stained Papers, Foraging Your Backyard and Experimenting. And exploring is really the key, because we're not doing my tried and developed technique. I'm not teaching that in that class. You have to take the grand course for that. It's a very intense, elaborate, in-depth study, the plant stained paper, the grand course. And I'm not going into that in this class. This class is simply taking you back to 2006 when I first discovered this technique. And I'm going through the steps that I still use to this day when I want to introduce new plant elements to the plant elements that I already know work, because it's not as easy as just going to your yard and picking a plant and sticking it in hot boiling water with paper and getting it to work. It's just not that easy. But these are two pieces that I did in filming the class that I just think are gorgeous. This one in particular, this pink one, you'll see me in the class talk about this one. These are leaves from a China rose bush that I have out near my mailbox, and it was done on some pink paper. And I just absolutely think that is gorgeous. So the whole class, if I had just gotten this, I would have been just as ecstatic. But I did get more. But I absolutely love this. I'm not going to draw on this one. I just love this like it is. And so that one I'm not going to draw on. This one is a sea grape that I got, that we have growing in our backyard as well. We planted that sea grape probably maybe a year and a half ago. And this was just a small one. And as you can see, that one looked up really great. So this isn't for me to go through all these papers, but I do want to go through the imagery. So when I talk about imagery, I talk about what I see as far as popping out of these stains. And I believe the only person in our group that has taken an imagery class from me before is Deborah. We did it at Artmore Place. Do you remember that, Deborah? She's muted, I think. But we did it at Artmore Place.
I don't know if that was it. I came all the way to Lakeland to a little store, and remember you found a giraffe, and I found an elephant. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you did SoFlo. I thought you did both of them. Maybe not.
I don't remember.
Okay, maybe you just did I do remember the elephant. So maybe that was the one at SoFlo for some reason, because we did it at Artmore Place too, and we used pastels. But I do remember you being in one of them, and that was SoFlo that was here in Lakeland. And what I love about the plant stained paper is the imagery that it pulls up. And so I'm holding this one. Do you see anything on here?
Penguin. I see a penguin.
You see a penguin.
I see a golden retriever.
Oh, that's so great. I didn't see either one of those until I saw a moon with a stocking hat. A penguin or a golden retriever. So that's it. That is the fun about the imagery, is that everybody sees something different. They're coming from a different part of, their perspective. And so here's another one. And what do you see in this? Do you see anything in this one?
I definitely see a face on the left.
Yes.
On the left.
Yes. Looks like a boy blowing bubbles with bubble gum.
That's good.
That's yeah.
That's awesome.
I see a cat
face, a cat
cat.
face. Up.
With one ear on the left.
Yeah, one ear in the light color.
I see that.
Eye, and then it's
awesome.
like he's hiding behind something.
Oh, that's awesome. That is great. And I saw the profile of the face that was first called out, and then I saw an owl. That this was of course, because I always see owls.
Yeah,
you see owls, we see cats.
Yep, there you go. And so that's how everybody sees something different, and that's just my favorite thing about it. This one, so some of them you may not be able to tell because it's kind of the lighting in here, but I saw kind of the dog. See if you guys follow this. There's the nose. It's a profile of the dog. There's the nose, and there's the head, and right here's the big floppy ear.
Oh,
yes.
And this is his big belly. So he's kind of like relaxed against something and just chilling. And I'm sure my dogs would love to be in here just chilling with me because I have them trapped in a room. But I just love that. And so in a minute, I'm going to pick one and go ahead and actually pull it out. This was an envelope that I did. And this morning, and I kind of did go through some of these this morning, and I saw something on here, and it was, I don't think you can see in the camera. It's a rabbit is what I saw with the head right here. Again, the profile, the ears sticking up this way, and then the big fluffy body. Does anybody see that?
Loosely.
And that's a key word, is because when you're doing imagery, you don't necessarily find something that is so vibrant and just screaming at you. Sometimes you do, but sometimes
that one's screaming.
What is this screaming to you, Deborah?
I see a headish in the middle, angel wings, a staff.
Okay. So is this your head?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I do see it.
Do you see that? And are these your wings?
That's one wing, and then there's one on the left. But really, it would be better with the one on the right, just making up the wings.
Yeah. And then see, I saw this face. Do you see that eye? And then the nose this way. So my face was this one. It was a little bit bigger. And then standing there, and again with the wings coming this way, kind of like a fairy, and then holding a bouquet. So isn't that great how we can all see something different? This one I was holding this way. I should have made some notes. I can't remember. I don't see it now. What I saw. Oh, well, I do actually. Let me ask you if you see anything first.
I see a rocky landscape. Like on the right is the rocks, the cliff, more rocks, then some water and a tipped over boat.
Oh, wow.
And then lots of clouds.
Lots of clouds.
Don't know where that came from.
That is awesome. She's got a whole landscape here.
There's a horizon. I see it.
Right here. The sun horizon is rising over it. And see over here, I see an animal face. I see the two eyes in here and the dropped jaw to it, and then some ears coming out like a giraffe head is what I see over there. Very good.
A giraffe in the clouds.
A giraffe in the clouds. There you go. Okay. And then I just want to go through, there's just a couple more, and then we're going to have to choose which one we do. So this one was done on orange paper, and this is a purple heart plant, and then some Chinese fringe flower over here. And so that gave a really great stain, and you can see the imagery kind of through there. And I saw a fairy in this. Let me see if anybody sees something else, but I'll show you where I saw that fairy.
I see a forest, like there's a big tree on the left. And then the other thing looks like a tree too, but then at the top of that right there, it's like a little mountain house sticking out of the mountain.
Right in there?
Yeah.
Very cool. And see, now when I look at that, that looks like a little owl peering out behind that tree. So I was going to say, that's awesome. And so, see, I originally saw a fairy, that this orange part was the profile. Here's her body. And then her wings came up through there. So she was kind of up here, almost like she was behind the tree as well. So, cool. Wow. Yeah. So all kinds of things. Okay. And then this one, I think this is my last one. I'm not going to go through the rest. As you can see, I have a huge stack, but I just wanted to show you how there are such a variety. Even some of them that are using the same plants obviously have a different variety of stains that come up in the imagery. Does anybody see something on there they want to share?
I see a dancing animal. 3 legs are down, 1 leg is up.
Where? The here?
Yeah, 3 legs down, and there's 1 leg up like he's walking
Up there.
over to the far right.
Oh, to the right. Yep. Oh, right here, kind of?
And then his little face, and he has a white chest.
Oh, that's so, and so as soon as you said that, what popped into my mind was a poodle that there's the face and
well, I love
legs.
Poodles.
I know, and I miss Maya.
I know.
Look how sweet. Yeah, I know you love poodles. So, and then I was thinking like there would be like a little leash coming up and somebody would be walking. I'm thinking of the French Parisian scenes that we see a lot of times that have little French poodle on a leash walking around the Eiffel Tower behind it. And so that's what's so fun. I'm going to move. There was one other one that I wanted to show you. In the class that we do next week, of course, I go through all of it. We don't talk too much about imagery, but we talk about the plant staining. But this was one that really did not work. And I do talk about this in the class in a different way. This was done on parchment paper. But when I look at it from the imagery standpoint, not from the plant staining standpoint, but from the imagery standpoint, I see definite imagery. Does anybody else see something in there before I say what I see?
Oh, I see an angel in the middle with her arms up.
Yeah,
right
she has
there.
Brown hair.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the Greek goddess that you see that has the scales, she's holding, I think they use it for law, symbolism. That's what I see. I see this Greek goddess right here, her 2 arms up, and she's basically kind of holding those scales. When I first opened her up, I saw a mermaid, of course, because that's my other thing that I see. And her body was here, and then the mermaid tail came up and around up to this corner. And so even though the plant stains didn't work on this, the imagery is amazing.
Beautiful.
And the crinkly looks like clouds. It could be clouds. It could be water. It could be wings.
I love
Isn't
that.
it great? Yeah, it's really beautiful. There's actually a daisy here, and I'm not quite sure you can see that.
Barely, yeah.
Barely. And that's what I was hoping would come out on this parchment paper. And we talk about the trial and error, and we talk about what makes things not work as well as what makes things work. And but this paper in itself is just a phenomenal paper, and it has a great crinkle. Look at that. It's just a great crinkle. Okay. All right, enough of that. Let's go ahead and do some sketching. I have to move. I have my fan on, so my sunshine is holding my fan on. All right, so we had all of these, and I'm going to go ahead and pick something that we want to go ahead and paint. And I think that I might do this one. Do I want to do this one? Which one do you guys want to? Let's see. I want something that you can see really well. I think this one was probably the one that you could see the best.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. Okay.
They're all good.
They're all good. They're all fun. And I just sit here for hours a lot of time. And when my journals, I actually take my journal to my comfy spot and I just draw and draw and draw. Okay. So what's going to happen though, is you may not be able to see, I'm going to get a little bit closer, and you may not be able to see all the pencil lines, but I'm going to do this darker than I normally would do for me. So if you are doing some imagery alongside with me, if you're doing some sketching, if you've got something to work on, you don't need to do yours as dark as I do. I'm doing them dark so that it shows up on the camera. This is a Blackwing Pearl pencil. This is a softer, it's kind of a medium lead. It's between the Blackwing 206 and then there are other pencils. And I have found that I really, really like this style. So when I start pulling out imagery, I do it a few different ways, but the one way that I do more than anything is I just start to sketch but I don't want to lose the shadow. I'm going to go ahead and do the one that you guys saw. I saw this one, but then once you start talking about it, I see this other one. But excuse me, that's why I have my fabulous mugs here. So when I start coughing, there we go. I start talking so fast, and I've got what just flew across is a little stowaway leaf that was on something, obviously. Okay, so my fan is blowing. But what I don't want to lose is this shadow that is already there. Yeah. And so again, I'm going to pull in. Do you see that with her face?
Yes.
Look at that. It's already so strong. So I'm not actually going to sketch that, because if I put my pencil over it and then I start to erase that later, I have a chance that I might lose that shadowing just in all my work. So I'm really not going to do anything, but her neck is, or the bottom of her head is already here. So very lightly, I'm just going to add that in right there. And then her hair, or her head, I see some hair here, and that's the top of the leaf that is making those designs. And you can kind of see that it makes a cap of hair already on her. And then this is all shadowed already. So again, I don't need to do too much, just maybe right here. And so that's the basic of her head. Even if I only saw her head and nothing else, I can go ahead and pull out the rest of her the way that I want her to be. And so I know that her neck should be kind of right there. So when I do imagery, the whole thing doesn't have to appear, just parts of it. And if you're following along, as your eye starts to get used to the design, think about those, what were they called? Magic eye posters in the 1980s. And you had to stand there and stare at the poster for a while until an image, a three-dimensional image came up. Well, this is very similar in the fact that as I stand here, or as I stare at it, I'm going to start to see other parts of her come out. They may not have been there before, but because I am looking at her, they're there now. So I just put her shoulder in right here. Her arm drops to here. Her hand would come across here. But you know what happened is that she's holding a bouquet. And there's a little flower in there. And there are some leaves and some other flowers that she's holding. So her hand is really not showing. She's just kind of clutching that. And again, those were there. I'm just following some of the lines that I see, because now my mind is interpreting it in a different way. So over here's her other shoulder. She's looking kind of forward at us. And you guys are going to, kind of roll your eyes at me shortly. But there happens to be a bikini top. And actually, I just saw that. So this was like a top of it. Maybe a big bikini top.
The angel is wearing a bikini.
Well, you saw an angel. Guess what I saw? After you
a bride.
I kind of, let's see, after you guys led me to this one as an angel, then I started seeing something else. And let me see if I can pull her out. Whoops. I'm going to erase this line right here. I have to go this way. What I saw then was not an angel, but now see, I had to get quiet so I could see this. Do you know what that is?
Mermaid tail.
A mermaid tail. I ended up seeing a mermaid tail, And so now I have this tail and I have her, and I have this bottom kind of her little tushy right here. There's the top of her tail, the top waist of her tail. So now somehow I need to connect this mermaid tail to the rest of her body, if that's her rear end. So how does her tail come around? It's going to come around and have to swish or swoosh, however you want to call it, a swish or a swoosh up into that tail. And I have to go around this way for it to work.
Wow.
So again, when we were talking, and even this morning when I looked at this, I didn't see her as a mermaid. I saw this one over here as a fairy. But as we started talking and as I started pulling things out of her, then she came up to me as a mermaid.
There she is.
There she is. So she's twisted around. I may need to go ahead and fix this just a little bit, maybe narrow her in and give her. So sometimes that, that path is going to be there. And sometimes you're kind of elaborating a path or developing that path to go through there. And there's her tail. So I see her, and then I start to add some design. So let's say she had a little hairband up here. A tiara. Perfect, Gloria. A tiara. Let's go ahead and put in a little diamond or ruby or amethyst or something like that at the top of her little tiara there. And mermaid's hair is usually flowy. And what happens is there's another leaf back here that I was ignoring. But if I'm making her a mermaid, her hair is going to come back here. And this then becomes that hair back there. So see, we just kind of elaborated all of that because we saw a face. And it's really important to do what you see. So it's very authentic. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit skimpier. Sorry, mermaid people, or sorry, angel people, but she's going to have a little skimpier top on. It was too big. But, you have to kind of go with it. And I love the way that it continues to evolve. Okay, so we drew that out. One of the things that I am really particular about, I guess I should say, as far as plant staining, is I am such a purist. I love the stains. Those are by far the most important part. So when I start to add pencil or add color, watercolor, I do it from a very light layering technique. Instead of covering up those stains, I want to bring them out. And a lot of times I am doing the negative space and letting the positive space stay with the plants. So this part that's darker, to me, is going to be beautiful waves. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with my paints over here. I do want to show you, and I'm gonna zoom out for a little bit. I want to show you what paints I'm using. This is a classic set. These are all from Art Philosophy classic set. Now, those of you that take art journaling, and I'll see you tonight, just so you know, sorry guys, but this is what I use. Look at the difference.
Yeah.
This is the one I use for art journaling. So anyway, so that is my classic set that I'm using. So it makes me look really, fancy and really nice, but I'm really messy in real life. Okay. And then these are vintage pastels. This is probably one of my favorite sets to use with plant stain papers. The vintage pastel kind of gives this idea that they're very light, but they're not necessarily that light. I can layer them up, but they're not too strong in the beginning. And then this is Decadent Pies. And I like this one as well for when I'm doing my plant stain paper. So these are, even though these are not the 3 that I use in my art journaling class, those are the 3 that I use when I'm doing my plant stained paper imagery. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of my blues, and I'm using a Princeton Aqua Elite round brush in number 6 size. These are vegan brushes. I don't use any animal hair brushes, and I really like the way that these work. So I'm going to go ahead and start with just a really light blue of my classic, and just start to go over this gray area. Now, this gray area occurs because all the colors of the plants that I've put together are kind of muddling in together. And I'm going to go to the blue beside it and do some darker blues in some of these darker areas. And I really don't want to do it heavy on top of this muddled area, because it'll just start to get dark. And my goal is not to get dark. But as you can see, I'm going to kind of do the negative area and go ahead and start putting some of this color on my palette so that it doesn't get too dark right to going to my page. So I put some of that on my palette. I'm going to mix some water with it. And I'm going right over this leaf that I had originally thought was a face. But I'm pulling it in there. I'm not getting right up into that face of the mermaid yet.
So is it lifting color off of the stain into the paint?
No, it is just going right in with the stain.
Okay.
So the stain is embodied in the paper now. That's one of the biggest difference about this technique that we do, is that we're staining the paper. So think of your clothing and how you get a stain, and that stain goes into the weave of the material. This stain goes into the fibers of the paper. And so when I'm adding color, I'm adding that on top of what stain is there. It does not affect the stain at all.
What kind of paper is that?
This paper, this was one of my grunge paper. No, not a grunge. What was this? This was a drawing paper. This is just regular drawing paper. If you remember with the exploring group that we're doing, exploring class that we're doing next week, we're just using whatever you have in your stash. And that's what I had here.
Okay.
So, yep. And so now I'm going to just come in, and now I'm not in the darker parts anymore. And it's going to be a little bit lighter. And again, I'm just very, very light. The shadowing of the plant staining is what is making that just so interesting.
Right.
You know, so my goal is never to overpower the stains that are laying there already. They're always just to enhance. Very different than just on a plain piece of paper. Okay. And I'm actually going to take some of this blue and just kind of come up this way a little bit and just start to add a little bit more. I'm not going to do the whole paper this blue, but just to kind of give a little bit of a look connecting over here. Now this paper came out not very strong. The drawing paper just could not withstand the boiling so well, but I would not ever make a book out of this paper, but I would definitely glue this into something, you know, that in a journal or something like that. Okay, I'm going to take a lighter blue now from my vintage pastels. This is a periwinkle. And I'm going to start with this periwinkle up in this corner. the idea that maybe the light, it would be a little lighter over here. As you can see, it just looks like I'm kind of wetting the paper, but there'll be some color that's coming up as well.
It seems to be taking the paint well.
You know what I've noticed on some of these papers that don't usually like a lot of water? Once they're boiled, like this being an experimental piece of paper and boiling and all that, once it's boiled, it almost breaks down the topical part so that it will take your paints a little bit better after that. Like this is probably taking paint better now that it was boiled and wet than it would have if it, before. Okay. So again, I want to enhance, not overpower. And I'm gonna kind of assess this for the image that she is. For example, the yellow that is running through her is the plant staining. These little kind of bubbles, I'm not sure if you can see that. Those are actually veins of the leaf that are in there. I want to enhance. I don't want to overpower. So I need to think about what I can do to enjoy the plant stains as well as bring her out as a mermaid. Now, does that mean that I want her to be yellow? It's okay if she is. That's not really going to bother me. But I'm going to go ahead and take this kind of terracotta color from the Vintage Pastels. It's very light. I don't even know if you can see it. Right there. And I'm going to take a little bit of the rose, it's a dark rose, and put it over here. And I'm just going to pull one color into the other and just kind of blend it up here very lightly. Now I pulled both of those colors because they should enhance the yellow versus overpower the yellow. Now it's just going to look dark for a minute. It's just looking wet. So you have to give it time to kind of dry out and then add some color to it. So again, just kind of wet. This would be her neck area. Let me get a little bit more of the rosy color going on there. And then once that dries, that's the thing with watercolors, it's going to be a good bit lighter. And so I want to go ahead and keep working all of my parts that would show skin at the same time so that I don't forget, first of all, how I did it. And secondly, they don't look like they're not connected in some way. So these were all kind of the skin areas. And that was that terracotta and the dark rose. And so I'm just going to let that dry a little bit. And really, I don't want to do too much to her tail because it has so many great embellishments in there. So I need to go back to my blues. Let me get this little kind of a grayish blue here, parakeet, and some of this other blue with it. And make sure that I can tell that that's still part of the water. Come back in here. Very light. And I'm not trying to color in the whole thing. It's not a coloring book image. And those of you in art journaling tonight, we're going to be doing some watercolors and we're going to be doing some loose things. So you'll be doing a little bit more of that. Okay, so I'm going to get some more of that blue. You can see how that blue, after it's been sitting there, has gotten really dark. So that's why I'm using my paint palette and putting some water in with it, really spreading it out a bit because I don't want it that blue. I'm pulling in here. Now, one of the things that you can see happens is that even though those stains are in the paper, those stains are yellow. And when I put the blue with it, it turned green because blue and yellow make green. So that blue, that tells me that that blue watercolor is seeping down into the paper itself and not reactivating the stain, but acting with the stain. And so you can use that to your advantage as well. Okay. So while her skin is drying still, I can do some of the other parts. And one part that I want to do is her hair. And so I'm going to take, let's see, what color hair do I want? I want to be different enough from the yellow stains and the plant stains and all of that, but yet interesting, right? I still want it to be pretty interesting. I'm not really a red person. So I do love red hair, but I feel like that would be just really bright on her. So I'm going to start out with this light pink from the vintage set.
I thought for sure you'd go purple of some tone of purple.
Well, I believe me.
No
I
surprise, right, Gloria?
Yes, I agree.
I have purple in the plans. So just so you know, purple is going to be there. And I'm going to take some of that pink and then I'm going to add a little bit of the red from the classics and just put it right in there and just give that a little bit more depth. But you see how it's not overpowering red, and because I want those leaf impressions to still show. Just that. It's not even colored all the way in. It's just enough to give it a tad of a touch, and you're still seeing the plants through that.
Now, I am intrigued because I expected that to kind of turn a peachy color, and it looks purple to me. It looks like a lavender.
It's more like, it is kind of that mauve-y, purpley color that is just my absolute favorite right now. And the reason why is because, again, the surface that it went on. So it wasn't a crisp white background. It was a drawing paper, which number one is going to soak in more color than a watercolor paper. Mm-hmm. And so that color is actually going into the grain of the paper more than sitting on top. And it had a grayishness to it. It had a gray tone to it because these were leaves. This was actually a rose leaf that was right here.
But it was yellow and you put a pink on it. So I expected...
There wasn't any yellow in here. There wasn't any yellow
to me.
So there's yellow here in the tail.
I
there's
can
yellow
see that
here.
That's darker.
Mm-hmm. There was if any yellow, it would have been right in here. That's it. Okay. So now what I have is, again, I don't want anything to really make it so bold that it's going to, it's going to just overpower everything. So using this same mix that I have right there, I'm going to add some of the hot pink from the classics over here. So I'm using the base that I've already made so that there's still kind of a blending or a connection going on. And I'm popping that down here with this flower. We know that it's going to work with the yellow because pink and yellow are friends, right? And then what I saw as another flower right here, I'm actually thinking it should be just a bunch of leaves, maybe some seaweed. So I'm going to take some of this green that is just very fluorescent. That's that fluorescent green that I fight with even during art journaling. And I'm going to take a little bit of the evergreen color. It's called Key Lime from Decadent Pies, and mix it to take a little bit of that tone down. And because the background is yellow, all I have to do is add a few little strokes of that green, and I can feel it coming up as leaves kind of right there. Okay. Now, where's the purple? Well, first of all, let me draw attention to her skin. Do you see how her skin color, remember how dark that was? It was almost, see what it did? Isn't that pretty?
It is.
Really pretty. So the thing with using papers that are stained with plant elements is to understand that you're working on a layer already. And just like layers of paint interact with each other, the layer of paper is an interacting layer. And so when you get into, plant stained papers that are actually, let me see if I've got something here. This is the difference between what I call plant stained paper or paper stained with plants. The paper that, is this the one I wanted to show you? I don't know. But this is how vibrant, my designs are versus very light. But you can still work with them in so many ways. You just have to remember that they are a layer. Okay, so purples. Well, purple has to be in all my artwork. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. And the fact that there was so much yellow in here is kind of putting off to the purple a little bit because purple and yellow make mud. But if I take some of these tones, like these vintage pastels that are a little bit lighter, and I mix a little bit of a color that we know works with the yellow, which is this pink, it's almost like I'm making a barricade in a way. So if I come in and I just drop in some of that color, I don't want to color over the whole thing because remember, I want some of this to show, but I do want to have a little bit more of the imagery being obvious. So then I'm going to come to the top of my mermaid tail and I'm going to come in here, just do some designs up to that corner. Because, purple needs to be as much of the design as possible. So that is more like a deeper lavender it becomes. And I can make something that looks like scales all the way down. I notice that I have an extra line here that I don't want. You have to be careful if your paper is wet, if you're going to erase. Okay, and then just a few little scales. And those are just kind of spots here. And so there's now a connection between this tail and the rest, and then her bikini top. I'm going to put a little bit of this pink kind of right in the middle here. And simply look at her. She's so pretty, isn't she? And I'm going to take a little bit of that darker green from the Decadent Pies and just do a little bit of an outline on the bottom side of these leaves, or a little bit of a dark line, I should say. We're going to let that sit there for a minute, and while it's sitting there, take a little bit of the pink straight from the pan and do a little bit of pink under there and under this way to show some petals. And so that sat there for just a minute. Get a little closer. And so now I just have a brush of water and I'm just going to kind of spread that darker part out. And that way I have a little bit more of a shadowy thing going on to give it some rise, give it some lift. And I want a little bit of that under her bikini top So to get that, I'm taking the color that I had mixed with some water and lightened it up. I'm actually taking that without any mix of water. It's just kind of straight out of the pan to give it some lift, and that'll dry. But then I need to do some of that down here. Now I could outline with charcoal or a deeper pencil and use my blending stump, but when I'm working in my papers that are plant stained, I really like more of a subtle approach. And if the shading or the shadowing is already there, I just leave it like on that face. I don't need to do anything at all. She's very glamorous. Okay, now I'm taking the purple. Let me get it from here. And doing her little tiara. And then I'm going back to this little rosy color and giving her a little bit more hair color right in there. And a little bit of kind of streaks to show directionality of her hair sweeping across. And so it's very much like a leaf in that way. Isn't she pretty?
Beautiful.
And she was there. You know, at least she started out being there. And so I was just able to take that one little nudge of you guys seeing an angel right here. And then my mind kind of interpreted it to see what I saw. But in the beginning, like I said, this was who I saw right in here. And she could still be there. You know, she could be another face in here, almost like a dream face. Her I'm going to just use some water and you'll actually see her. But her neck was right here. There was her face, the profile of her. Her hair was right here. And then her body kind of filtered down there. Very different style. Okay. So the last thing that I like to do is, again, I went ahead and I did some of that not outlining, but shadowy, but over here, it just kind of got lost in the paper. So now I have to do another layer. And sometimes you do have to do that. And it's better to go ahead and do multiple layers than come out too strong, because you can't, you really can't wipe it off, especially this paper that is so fragile at this point, since it's not really meant to be boiled. Okay, so I'm just taking some of that purple right out of my pan. It's a little darker, adding just a little bit of the idea of kind of scales. And I actually use the same brush the whole time. A lot of times I'll switch sizes, but this is kind of my go-to size. So I was really happy with that one.
So tell me again what kind of paper that is.
So this is just regular drawing paper. I want to say probably 90 weight, 90 pound.
Okay.
I don't have my booklet in here, but I tell you that in the class next week. But again, for this class, it's all about using your paper stash. So it's about using what you already have and figuring out if the plants are going to work. That's the biggest thing. So I know you and Deborah have already done my grand course, and we're not going to talk about that here because there's all kinds of secrets and proprietary information. But, the paper is different, obviously. The plants, in this course, it's just so important to figure out how these plants function to release their stains. And you're going to see that it's very different than the plants that I have you use in the grand course. Okay. That's pretty cool, isn't she?
Yes.
She's really pretty. And she would have just a sweet little quote down here. And as you can see, as she starts to dry, this is what I really love, because I know when I teach those imagery classes, and I'm about to do one, like to actually film an imagery class. Everybody's like, I don't want to cover up the plant stains. And so it's not about covering up the plant stains. It's about enhancing the stains already there and pulling out the imagery that the stains created. So it's a collaborative activity. And, you know, one of the things, and again, I keep pulling, I had this one out because I was working on it, this journal. This is one I think that I probably showed you before, but the owl being there, these are the same colors, as you can see. Now this is on a and you can see she was in there. These are not plant stained. These are hand dyed papers, because I'm also working on those too. But I think I wanted to say that I had something else right here, but so this one, maybe I'll use this one as an example. This one really covered up. This was plant stained, and this was something I submitted to a magazine. It was in like Somerset Studio, right? Like 2015 or something like that. It was a while ago. But you can see that a lot of the plant stains were kind of covered up. And that's okay too, because it just depends on what your purpose is. You know, the idea is that if this was not a plant stained piece of paper, I would have never gotten to this face. This face occurred because of the imagery that the plants gave me. And that was the same thing with all the rest. You kind of see and hear the different plants in there. So that just happens to be what I have close. But anyways, yay. So any questions about the class next week? Because we talked a little bit about it, but no?
Well,
just ready?
I'm going to give you just a piece of information. Okay. My yard has no flowers.
Okay.
Lots of weeds, probably you would call them. Mm-hmm. Although it is kept nice, Gary does a great job, but we don't landscape with flowers. I would love to, but I'm just not able to do that. So most of what I get is going to be what I would call weeds, and I have no idea what they are.
Okay. So, all right. So number one, flowers are not something that I use usually at this level. When we do the grand course, it's a huge part of it. But this level, this beginning introduction is not about flowers. I end up using Barberton daisies because I just bought them for our yard and they were dying. And I have a rose bush around our tree. But other than that, everything that I've used in this class are grasses and from trees, leaves from trees, even wild spiderling. Scarlet spiderling is what what grows in our grass, just wild, and I use that. So okay. The whole thing is use whatever you have. And then I also, on a couple of the different segments, and I'll tell you this now, is I suggest using and my phone's up there, so I can't remember what it is, but it's an ID, it's a plant identifier. And so all you have to do is get that app on your phone, and you go up to whatever plant you have, even a weed, and you just snap the picture and it'll tell you what it is.
Wow.
It's called if you have an iPhone, but if you have an iPhone, there's a built-in plant ID.
But the app she's talking about is called iNatural.
No, well, that's a different one. That's actually not the one that I'm using. But yes, there are several. So whichever one you like the best, This one is called Planta, maybe Planta. I don't remember, but I have it on like 3 different segments of the thing next week. Okay. So you'll be able to do that. And the interesting part is that you'll think it's a weed, and you'll think that it is something that let me see if I can find the attachments, because I can't see, honestly. So here we go. You'll think that it's a weed, but even weeds have reasons to be there. And so let me see where my I don't know where the list is. Here it is. Maybe this is it. So everything's already, the class is actually all ready to go. Picture This is the one I use. That's what it's called. Picture This. So I've used a variety of them, but Picture This is my favorite. But it was funny because I went into my yard. I had just bought a lot of plants to plant because we're trying to landscape some different areas. And my husband he digs the holes because of my fractured spine. I'm not able to do that. But he didn't cut the grass for a while. And so we had, it's Florida, and when I'm talking a while, it might be like 5 days, because with all of our rain, you cut it in like literally an hour after it rains, you can see it growing. But there were weeds everywhere, and he started calling them weeds. I'm like, no, those are actually things. So I just took the Picture This app and was taking pictures. The scarlet spiderling was one. The there's another, I can't remember what the other name of it is, but it was another weed that was growing something buttons, coat buttons. It's called coat buttons. And those are the ones that grow up and they have teeny tiny little white flowers at the tips of them, and they're just weeds that we would call them, but I used them. So I used all of those. And then I snipped from some trees that we have growing around. That's the thing, is that it's all experimentation. So just use what you've got. Use the paper that you've got. Use the plants that you've got. Go through this process and start learning and seeing if any of them are willing to give some expression of their essence. But we go through that in this class. We go step by step by step, and I show you how. Oh, people have been asking me questions, and of course I can't see. Sorry. When I want, yes, exactly. Is that Bonnie? Yes, definitely. So, the fun thing is, like, my daughter is a tour guide for Frank Lloyd Wright, the Frank Lloyd Wright Center over at Florida Southern. And she gets people on her tours all the time that ask about all the plants around. And she never, she doesn't really know some of them. And so I was like, you need to put this app on your phone. So because all you do is just snap it, take a picture, and it'll tell you everything about it. So it's awesome. But I think, Deborah, you use a different one, don't you? But which one do you use?
Well, I've used Picture This, and I do like it, but there is a built-in plant identifier on the iPhone.
Is it Planta?
No. If you pull up a picture of a plant on your iPhone, if you look, any picture on your iPhone, at the bottom is a little eye.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that.
And when you press that, in this case, it says look up book, because it's a picture of books. But if it was a picture of a plant, it would say look up plant. And when you press it, it would tell you the name of it.
Okay.
So it's already in your iPhone.
Very good. So you can definitely use that one too. I think my Facebook live stream may have gone off, so I apologize to anybody who was on there. Well, actually, you can't hear me apologizing. Let me see. No, maybe not.
Facebook. I see a little Facebook.
Is it still on there?
Screen.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at it on my other monitor, but my other monitor must be just replaying. So yeah, so I think those identifiers are the best. The paper, here's what I say about the paper, because when I went ahead and after I filmed the whole class, I wanted to do a promotion with some of my students, and I had Karen and Diana and Christy come over, and they did some of the parts of it. And but I like boiled everything again, or I boiled another batch for them to like kind of, in 10 minutes before clay class, I wanted them to kind of do a quick shoot. Anyways, so the second batch, I made some alterations. And I put that in as a bonus video, obviously, at the end of the class, actually. So you have 5 days. And then on that 5th day, when we do the conclusion, I actually include another bonus video of this next batch that I did. And I adjusted things according to different variables. But why was I telling you this? I can't remember why I was telling you this. Telling you something about the app. I can't remember. Anyways, I did use that app more for that one too. Oh, the paper. I know what I was going to tell you. The paper. Sorry, my brain cyst is back, and you can tell it's really kind of having an issue with my head. So what I did with the second time was I made a little number. I put a little number in Sharpie on the paper, and then I made a key with that number so that I remembered what kind of paper it was. So if you start to use a lot of different papers, then you may want to make a key so that you can go back and figure out what paper you used if you really liked it. But again, I told this to somebody because they're like, I don't have any paper. So if you don't have any paper, just go to like a hobby store or something like that, and maybe just buy a little book on sale of watercolor paper or drawing paper, whatever it is, and then get some individual papers. But honestly, as you can see, I used all kinds of different sizes. I used envelopes. I have elephant poo-poo paper. We talk about that in class. Just a variety of scraps. Anything like that goes for this, because it's really about the experimentation. It's not about making gorgeous papers that you're going to stitch into books. That's not what this class is for. This is way back. This is how I started, and this is how I lived for several years on our farm, just experimenting and developing and exploring, and seasons were huge. So when you think about it, we were in North Carolina, and there were certain things that I could only experiment with for maybe 2 months out of the year every year. So it took me 3, 4, 5 years even to get all the data on a lot of the plants. So it was pretty interesting.
You said elephant. What?
Elephant poo-poo paper.
That's what I thought you said.
Exactly. Elephant poo. It's the best stuff in the world. Deborah, you and I have talked about elephant poo before, haven't we? Elephant poo-poo paper?
Yes.
Yes.
I have heard of it many times.
Yes.
I do not own any, but I have heard of it.
It's actually elephant poo.
It's made out of elephant poo. And the company, it's called poopoopaper.com. And I put that in the supply list also. In fact, the supply list should be open for you. You can go into the class. The supply list is there. And also, one of the segments from the first day is live. And it's the prepping one. Because I was getting so many emails from people saying that wherever they lived, their plants were dying because it was getting so hot. And so they wanted to go ahead, and harvest them. And so that one's already live as well. I'm not going to give you anything else until we start Monday. But that is live. So you can prep your plants and store them in a cool, dry place, which I use a refrigerator. Poo-poo paper, I'll get one of my journals out to show tonight before we start Venice for tonight's art journaling class.
So have you sold any elephant poo-poo paper journals?
No, I don't know, because Elephant Poo-Poo Paper is a company. So I do not use, that is their company. And they do have paper, and I have sketchbooks and journals that are already made, but I'm not going to use it's branded, so I can't use that. I don't have the rights to use it.
Okay.
And little hint, it doesn't work really well either.
All right. Because I didn't want to think that any of my journals are elephant poo.
Oh, you know what is elephant poo? You need to go ahead and research it though. It's great because they use all the fibers, so it's very environmentally friendly, and they use all the fibers obviously that comes out of the poo. They do elephant poo, panda poo, horse poo, and there's another one. I feel like it was dolphin poo, but the question is like, how could you really tell that it's dolphin poo and not another sea animal? But anyways, that same company does plant vegetation fibrous papers. So they do bamboo plants, and they do tomato plants, and they do there's like 5 different plants. I can't remember what the other plants are. And so and they've been around. We sold those journals in my store in Art Blooms that I owned in North Carolina. They've probably been around maybe 20 years. And the whole idea is that they are trying to make paper sustainable in sustainable ways. And so just read it. It's just a great website that I haven't been to their website in a long time, but we used to have this sample out in my studio for people because we had a gift shop part of it, and it was this kind of cycle of life for the poo. And it would show how they talked about cleaning it, and it was just awesome. I loved it. Anyways, I'm gonna find something like that. So
tell me again the name of the website.
I think it's poopoopaper.com. P-O-O, and it's on the supply list, I believe. It's on one of the things that I gave you.
Okay.
It may not be on that. It might be someplace else, but it's on a document that I downloaded.
All right. Got it.
Okay.
Well, I did not expect to learn that today.
See, you never know what you're going to learn with me, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I wish I was the one that came up with that. I wish I had some baby elephants that I could
or hippos.
You could do hippo poo. I don't know if they do hippo poo or not. You might want to check and see if they do hippo poo.
Hey, Rochelle, before you leave, I know you're having trouble like watching comments and stuff. Somebody requested to see the piece you worked on because it should all be dry by now.
Yes, I'm glad that you did that because I can't see that far. So there she is. Isn't she pretty? Now that she's dry, okay, so let me go just one more step.
You know me, I'm an outliner. I'd be taking my very finest Sharpie to that.
You would be.
I'm an outliner all the way.
Yes, and she does. She loves outline. This is a piece of willow charcoal. And I'm just going to remember where I did the dark paint, the darker watercolor? I'm just going to do a little bit of that. And so the idea is that your shadows, you pick, let me see if I can do it this way. Okay, so this is a quick little lesson. And this is one of the things I always tell my art journaling people, but think about a box and where your light source is. So if my light source is right here, then my shadows are going to be on the left side and the bottom side. So you always pick either left or right and top or bottom. So you always have 2 areas where you're doing shadows. So this is where I'm talking about on that. So left and right. So that means that I'm going to have some charcoal on the left side of some of these and on the bottom. So I'm going to go into each of these little leaves now. I couldn't do this when it was wet because it wouldn't let me move it around a little bit. There's just a tad, just a touch. You can see just a little bit, maybe a little bit under her neck right there. And then I'm going to take
that's purple charcoal.
Oh, willow. It's willow charcoal.
Okay.
Willow charcoal. And so then with my blending stump, I'm just going to blend that in a bit, and I blend away from the line that it is around. I'm just blending it into the background. This to me is what changes the whole shebang. But again, you can't do this if it's wet. And it's subtle. You know, the whole thing is you shouldn't, unless you're doing a black outline, like Deborah loves those black outlines, and that's just gorgeous. And that's another, it's just a different style than this. This is a very subtle shadow. And look at her. She's just coming up from the page now. And then I didn't do any up there, but I already had some charcoal on my blending stump. So all I have to do is just go around and add some in there. And so I'm doing some right inside the tail fin. We go a little bit more, and that just makes it a little bit more dimensional. See the difference? It just popped her out. So you just kind of see where you feel like those shadows would be based on where your light source is. And I probably got rid of it, but in our journaling, what we did the one time, if you guys remember, I did. I had everybody make a little sun or, a little sun or something, and to set it where they want their light source to be so that you can kind of remember which direction to do your shadows. But there you go. Pretty pretty.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you are welcome. I love doing that, and I usually just, you know, and I do it in my journals all the time, but it's fun to do it with these papers because thank you. I can see that. I'm a little blind, so I can't wear my contacts when I'm doing close-up work, so that means I can't see far away. But I usually just sit with a pencil and a few different watercolors and go in my journals and just play with imagery, because that, you know, and imagery is just, I see that everywhere, and that's just what makes me very happy as an artist. So, okay. Well, for some of you, I will see you tonight in art journaling. The rest of you, I hope I see you on Monday. We're going to be doing live every day next week, the same day of the challenge. So just so that I can answer any questions that somebody has. I couldn't see what.
See you Monday.
No, it says I'll try again. What was that? I'll try again.
Oh, that
has to do with the plant. The plant.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. Thank you. But yeah, so we're going to go live every day next week at noon Eastern, so that I can answer any questions. And then if we have time, maybe when we start to pull out our papers, we might do some imagery sharing and that kind of stuff. Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
See you later.
Okay, great. I'll see you later tonight.
Gloria.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And my art journaling people, I will see you tonight. Thanks so much. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.